get started. Welcome to Prime, everyone. My name is Hillary Hines. I am the Director of Special Projects here at Prime. So Prime Digital Academy was an idea that was born and built in the Twin Cities. So with our 20-week full-stack engineering programs and our 18-week UX design programs, we have over 600 alumni working in the field locally. And that's really a product of our favorite stat, which is that 86% of our grads are landing jobs in the field within 6 months and often earlier. So we're super proud of this diverse, this really passionate and generous community that we've built together. And we're excited to share with you today as part of Twin City Startup Week. I think the whole Prime family is excited to hit up all of the events happening this week and around town, which I hope you run into even more Prime students and grads out there. I know several students, and even Glidewell is attending beta.mn tonight, which is a super fun event. I'd recommend it. I know I'm personally excited about, there's a VR virtual reality event happening in St. Paul tonight, which should be pretty fun. I wanted to mention that last week we learned that Prime was nominated for the UFTA Startup Week Award, which recognizes really just kind of advocates and cheerleaders of the Twin Cities startup community, which I kind of thought was the perfect intro to our lineup today and what we hope to share with you guys over lunch today. But before we do, just a little bit on our agenda. So our panel today will go until about 1:15. And we really encourage you, if you're interested in Prime and interested in what these guys are talking about and just to learn a little more about us, we'll be hosting tours afterwards with myself, Mark Hurlbert over there in the corner. He's our CEO and founder of Prime. And our lovely panelists will be joining us too, so that's the time to answer questions. But that is happening from about 1:15 to 1:30 following the panel. So to kick things off, and before I introduce you to our panelists, we want to do a quick audience poll of you guys. So get ready to raise your hands. I'm going to ask a couple questions. Raise your hand if you identify as an entrepreneur. Awesome. Raise your hands if you identify as an aspiring entrepreneur. Some of the same people, cool. Raise your hand if you are considering learning to code to develop your app idea. Cool, a lot of you. Raise your hand if you're looking to learn tech skills to potentially land a job at a startup. Cool, a couple of you. Any other reasons you're here that we should know about? Cool, all right, let us get started. So, panel introductions, starting with Lukas. If you guys could just go around and we'll pass the mic around. It's on, and we'll leave it on. If you could please say your name, where you work and what you do, and what you did kind of before you attended Prime, our coding bootcamp, and really just started working at these startups.
Thank you. So my name's Lukas, and I graduated from Prime back in April, well, end of March. And I work for a local startup called Local Crate. We're a meal kit company specializing in kind of local food sourcing and distribution. I do full stack web development for them, and I got that job about a week after I graduated. They came in, watched our group project, and then I had an interview right after that. So I work anywhere between front end and back end, and I actually help automate stuff for our production teams to make their jobs and lives a little easier wherever computers can lend a hand. And that's kind of what I do now. Before that, I was an IT infrastructure consultant out in Portland, Oregon for about 3.5 years, working with small businesses that were looking to grow and needed technology to help growth not be a problem but a solution. So that's kind of how I got into what I do now, because I love to make things. Making things is fun, and Prime empowered me to do that. So.
My name is Claire Jackie, and I work for a startup called Drip. We build marketing automation software. And I was part of the first group of people that went through OG style. And I started off as an engineer at Drip, which was then called Lead Pages, and now have transitioned into a more people development role.
Hi, my name's Erin Seman, and I work at a startup called Sports Hub Technologies, and Minneapolis, we make fantasy sports applications. And I attended Prime. I graduated in January, right about the Super Bowl time, and been here for 6 months, and I'm loving it. I'm a UX designer, so not no coding for me, but I work with them on a daily basis, and it's been super exciting to be a part of a startup. The pace and having to do a little bit of everything, so it's a really great experience.
Hi, my name is Zach Garman. I am a full stack software developer at Kipsu, which is just like 6 blocks that way now. I have been there for about a year and a half. I graduated Prime back in December of 2016 and got a job at Kipsu right away. When I got a job, we were 26 employees, and now we're at 60, so we're an almost not startup now, I would say, at this point. Before that, I was involved in banking for about 8 years, and it was not fun. We won't even talk about it.
Hi, I'm Clyde Burdick. I work for Lab 651 as a software engineer. I was contractor 1 in the software department, which was neat. Before Prime, I was doing grounds work. I was a groundskeeper for a school district. I'd had other tech jobs in the past, but Prime gave me the tools I needed to become a software engineer, and today the app that I built on the base of my group project here is presenting at Beta MN. So it's a good day for me.
So I guess I didn't listen to directions, and before Prime, I was at. I think that's why it wasn't me. It was you. I was an account manager at Cummins Power Generation, so about as far away from what I'm doing as I think could be possible. Generators are pretty boring. But I have been wanting to make things, as was stated earlier, and be more creative, since I feel that that's what I can contribute to this world. And it was very difficult to get into another career without experience. Hit a lot of walls, and that's why I came to Prime. It's essentially getting you those years of experience in a short period of time. You're working for real clients, making real things, and putting together, hopefully, an awesome portfolio and speaking to that. So I don't have experience, but I have this, and Prime was an awesome sub-in for that.
We'll talk a little bit too about portfolios later on. I'm going to start just diving into questions, and I'll have just a few of you answer each one, and we'll go from there. So diving in and kind of starting at kind of the beginning of this journey, and you've already kind of mentioned a little bit, but tell us about this boot camp experience. I've heard it's intense, and I'm pretty sure y'all had to quit your full-time jobs. So tell me more about that. What was that like for someone that has no idea?
Yeah, so for my experience, it's called a boot camp for a reason. It's definitely very intense, full-time. When you get out of class, you go home and you work on things more. You work on the whole weekends. So it is a lot of work, and it was the first time I had ever actually enjoyed school. So, you know, it was both extremes. It was one of my favorite things I ever did, but it was also one of the hardest things I ever did. Just kind of going through where I was in life, before I started Prime, I had worked in a bank for a long time and never enjoyed what I did. I liked the people I worked with. I liked the company I worked for, but I didn't like the job I was doing. And so I needed a switch. I had the opportunity to go to Prime, and I had a couple other choices. I could have tried to go back to school for a CS degree. I could have gone to another boot camp. Prime just really appealed to me for so many reasons, but I think the people were the biggest one, and just the curriculum, knowing that you would get to learn the full stack of things. And certainly, I had never had much experience with technology or with anything like that, and so coming to Prime, it was kind of a mixed bag of a whole lot of learning, a lot of feeling like I don't belong, and a lot of joy of finding out that I kind of did. So I would say that, yeah, Prime is definitely a great choice, and it's a great way to get into the industry.
Anyone else want to touch on that?
I would second that. I feel like kind of one of the lucky ones in terms of the boot camp experience. I had a partner who was willing to support me and both financially and with like around the house, taking care of, and making sure I had the free time to do this. And so for me it was fairly easy in terms of keeping the home front taken care of, but the experience itself was certainly.
I'm going to move on to the next question, if that's all right.
Sure.
So you kind of heard with the quick audience poll that a lot of people in the room are interested in potentially learning tech skills to build their app idea. This event is called Build Your App Already. So could you build an app or an interactive prototype after your 20 weeks at Prime? And what skills were you armed with to make this possible? Could you build an app, and what skills?
I did.
You did? Great.
Essentially, the Vitals app is built off of my group project here.
Oh, wow.
I didn't do much of the mobile work, but I worked with another member of my cohort who did a lot of the mobile work
Oh.
for the app. So absolutely, yeah.
Awesome.
I'll second that. I mean, my solo project, functioning, useful app, at least I thought it was. Group project as well. We had a real world client. We met with them, got the requirements, and built it to spec, and they use it and they love it, which feels good. And one thing I've noticed that since I've finished Prime, I've had relatives and friends come to me like, "Hey, I have this idea. Like, what if we made this thing?" And my first gut reaction is like, "We could totally do that. We just need to figure out what tools we need to put to work." So like, Prime definitely empowered me to have the confidence to say, "Yeah, we'll figure it out." And having that underlying knowledge that Prime gave me kind of gives the confidence boost to say, "Yeah, we can do it." And it's definitely achievable. So.
And you guys were building like real functioning apps like in your kind of bootcamp program.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Mine was the Twin Cities Bicycle Club. We built a ride-sharing management platform for 2,200 people. It was like super cool. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Did you think you could do that when you first started?
Day one, no.
Yeah.
But it was fun seeing other groups come up and present their projects. And it was a little daunting at first, like, oh gosh, we're going to be expected to do that. But then about halfway through the program, you kind of start picking up on like, oh, we've just learned that last week. And like, oh, I bet I could build that part now. And then by the end, you're just kind of in the middle of it. And you're like, oh, I guess I already built it. Cool. So.
In some ways, Burner Space is the ideal space for Prime grads to get into because so much of it is proof of concept, and I feel like you can make more mistakes in proof of concept than if you're running a production.
Sure. When you say proof of concept, you kind of mean like MVP, just the minimum,
or even just show me that you can make this happen.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be pretty, but
you know enough about
light
kind
to
of the
light
pieces.
up.
Sure. Gotcha. Kind of a little bit of a segue. Another question. So so you guys all work at startups now. How exactly did you use these kind of new skills that you learned real quick to land your new job? Like, what was that like?
So at Sports Hub, I mean, I'm really passionate about sports. I play a lot of fantasy football to begin with, so it was a perfect opportunity. And I used a lot of the documentation that we learned about user journey maps, pain points, things. They said take a look at the website over the weekend before you come in for your interview. Let us know what you think. So I made an entire customer journey map from when they enter the site to when they actually create a lineup to submit for the contest, and identified pain points. Trying to do it in a way that's not saying it's wrong, but how it could be improved and how it's the same as the industry standard, but this is personally little tweaks that I think could be improved. But the tools I learned and at Prime are exactly what I'm using every day, but I think it's more so the way of thinking, and thinking about things from other people's perspectives when we were working in groups. I think that's the best part. Better than being online, you're working in a group, and it's more realistic as to what you're going to see in the real world, and everything's not going to be perfect, and you're not going to be best friends with everybody, but it kind of gave us a foundation for working with different types of people.
Yeah, and can anyone speak on like kind of the importance or that portfolio element? Like, so you're interviewing at these startups, you just learned to code 20 short weeks ago, and a week later you're getting hired. Like, why'd they pick you, or what did you show them?
Yeah, I think there's an aspect of storytelling that goes along with the portfolio that I think is unique to the bootcamp experience, where you have individuals who are coming from very diverse, disparate backgrounds who are able to like transfer the unique experiences that they've had into a like tangible thing to show, and I think that's enticing to a startup because like at the end of the day it's a like small group, like you're kind of taking a risk to a certain extent, and you have to be like able to wear, we were just talking about wearing multiple hats, and so I think the portfolio functions not only to like show that you learn and that you're able to action, but also because you're doing something that kind of came from you, you're able to storytell in that sense as well, which I thought was important in the like hiring process, which was like so long ago. How did that happen?
Like,
But
beyond your really great projects in your portfolio, you just had kind of the story of who you worked with and your experience with learning these things.
yeah, because it's possible that like you're more junior than the average like CS degree coming in, but I think that there's a background of experience that's unique and enticing to that startup as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I had a similar experience. The big thing I think was the idea of junior developer when I came out of the program. My company was looking for somebody who was willing to learn and who had the tools to continue to learn and the kind of the hunger to learn. And I think coming here and kind of going through the boot camp, as we mentioned, the intensity of the boot camp kind of shows that you're willing to kind of stick with it, learn new things. That served me really well in my current role, where I'm constantly learning stuff all the time. The portfolio piece, very helpful. I just kind of showed snippets of code that I was proud of, like, hey, I made this thing on the site, do this, check it out, and then being able to talk through it. I suppose a portfolio for a programmer is slightly different than UX folks, but the concept's the same. It's kind of showing that you can speak to the methodology.
Like they're literally like going in and looking at your code.
Yeah, I showed them. I was like,
Yep,
hey, check this
yep.
out. You know, because I'm happy to. I was excited about it, right? That's you want. We want people that are excited about that kind of stuff. So.
Kind of going off what she said is that just the act of putting together the portfolio enables you to understand why you did it, what happened, and better sell yourself during an interview, because that's really all you're trying to do. And I was shocked at how easily it came, but something that we haven't mentioned is that not only are we building things and putting together this portfolio, but there's also career talks. We talk about cover letters, resumes, how to publicly speak. We do a lot of that. That was difficult for myself and others included.
We're all still practicing.
Yeah,
Right?
it's not easy. And I mean, they were focused not just on what we were making, but how to make us more appealing to hiring managers. So there's, I think, every aspect of the career, getting a new job, switching career paths is taken care of in this program.
Sure.
So I worked in a startup collective space with others, and there was a gentleman I met there who was a computer science grad. He was just started the job, and we were kind of talking shop, which was fun, and it made me realize how much I had learned at Prime with hands-on skills. Like I had experience building apps with AngularJS, for example, and he was building helping build a platform in AngularJS, but he'd never touched web code except for like a 1-month class he took during his CS major. Now he could talk me under the table on algorithms and abstract computer science things, but when it came to like building the thing today, I found that I had a lot more to give in that conversation than I would have expected. So.
So kind of going back, just kind of hearing how intense this program was and like all these new skills you're learning, and you're building an app in less than 20 weeks. Go back to graduation day. Did you feel like you knew all
Absolutely not. I had, when I first got hired, I was told by a senior engineer the wisest advice I think anybody starting off in software development could get. When you first start off, it's a lot like learning a foreign language. At that point, you know enough to get yourself into jail, but not enough to get yourself out of jail. And it's very true. But one of the things that I think I like most about the job is that when you graduate from Prime, it's not like you're going to know everything. No one does. But if you can keep kind of at that pace, kind of learning kind of nonstop, being hungry, being excited to grow, it just keeps growing, and it just keeps going. When you get in your job, there's a ton more to learn. It's a lot more fun to just keep going and get paid for it for a new change. But you never, I don't think you're going to ever feel like you know everything, nor should you. But you're going to feel like you can probably figure it out. And that's a really weird feeling to shift from I don't know what I'm doing, I don't belong here, to, you know, I don't know what it is, I don't know how to figure it out right now, but I can probably get there some way or another. And I think that that's what Prime kind of teaches you, is by the time you graduate, you've built applications. You might still be in the process of improving them, but you know how to do it, and you can show it to yourself that you can figure that out. And then when you go to get a job, you have that confidence that you don't know everything, you don't have to know everything, but you can probably figure it out.
Prime, at least in my experience, doesn't give you the answers. If you ask a question, they're not going to tell you what to do. So they give you the tools to know where to look to figure it out. Especially if you've been out of school for a while, it's kind of just wakes up this scholar in you, and you, like you said, you're hungry to learn more. And I think that Prime also gives you the understanding that it's okay not to know everything, and it's okay to ask for help. And I think especially in a startup, that is something you need. You're not going to know everything because you're asked to wear so many hats, and people respect you more if you admit that you don't know something but you're willing to learn, and then you learn it so they don't have to keep telling you. I think that's big too.
I don't know when this is going to stop, but about every 4 months, it seems, is how long it takes my code from going to, yes, that's exactly what I wanted to do, to this is wrong. So yeah, the constant learning continues for at least 2 years, and I would guess 5, 10, 20.
Yeah, we often hear from some guests at Prime, experienced developers, that they still Google things, and that's totally all right.
Yeah.
Or what? Awesome. Anyone else want to touch on that? Or jump in?
A big skill I learned here. I did a lot of my last job doing IT work, which is also another Google-heavy line of work. But you just knowing how to frame your questions and kind of being able to separate the wheat from the chaff, because there's a lot of noise out there. And Stack Overflow, but I think all roads lead back to Stack Overflow if you're searching for a programming solution. So.
I'll move on to the next question. Let's talk a bit about now your experience at these local startups. You guys broke into kind of the community as entry-level developers and designers. What have you learned at your job that's likely really unique to the startup environment? Or sort of unique to the startup environment?
A lot of just saying yes, I can, in a lot of ways. So, for example, there's 2 of us on staff, and my first month on the job, actually, my lead dev went to Germany, so I was lead dev, which was simultaneously
right away.
Yeah, it was exciting and terrifying, and it was a lot of me sitting in meetings, but it was very similar to what I was doing here with the client work. It was my coworkers were my clients. It was gathering requirements. What do you need the site to do? And saying, yeah, I can figure that out, and then giving them realistic expectations on when I can get it done. And so that was, I think that's very startup-y. You're going to wear a lot of hats, we keep saying that, but you're going to be asked to do things you wouldn't have maybe thought fell within your realm of responsibility, but there's only so many people on the team to do all the things, and so was
And
just
it sounds
gonna
like it often is things that you've never done before. You don't exactly know how to do, but
oh, absolutely, yeah.
you know how to figure it out.
Totally, yeah. I did a lot of marketing automations for about 2 weeks. They're like, hey, our marketing team needs help doing X. And I'm like, sounds like you could use some code there. So learned a lot about that.
Very similar experience for me is my first project when I started was designing a brand new game, and it was just like, okay, go. There is nothing written down about the rules of the game, about what it should look like, and they're well. I mean, I know all the things about the game. If you have any questions, just ask. It's learning the right questions to ask. Like you said, gathering the requirements on your own because it's not going to be done before you or for you. Whereas if you had a client coming in, they kind of have some things that they want to see. But it was a very unique and rewarding feeling to design this entire game, and you just had to start somewhere. Design something, show them. At least their feedback is on against something that you can kind of take notes on instead of
You
tell
now
me
have a
how this game
prototype
works.
versus
Right.
yeah.
It's. I mean, they're never going to give you all of the information, and I mean the many hats, copywriting. There's no copywriter, so thank goodness I know how to string a few words together. It'd be bad. Thank goodness for Grammarly.com.
I would just add too that I think the startup community is really unique in that there are a lot fewer rules and roadblocks and a lot fewer constraints in what you can do. Two of my senior developers at my company left a very comfortable job at an established software company because they were never challenged. They weren't allowed to explore and to just challenge the norm, to do something different. I think a startup gives you that opportunity. It gives you the empowerment to make decisions on your own and to just kind of explore. And I think that you can come up with a lot better ideas when you're doing that rather than when you're playing by the book. So just being a part of the startup community has been amazing because you're not told what to do anymore. You get to help make that decision, which is a very different spot from most places you could end up being.
It's interesting to kind of hear this theme of of course, as our guests are kind of looking at tech skills do I need to learn to build out this idea or to land a job. I mean, certainly you need to know some of the foundational tech skills, but it's almost more about how to approach a project or what kind of questions to ask and kind of things outside of kind of those core tech skills. It seems like they're pretty important.
Yeah, my background in IT for 10 years. I use some of those skills, but they don't fall into what I do as a programmer. We don't have huge infrastructure projects. There's 12 of us, so I don't really do that. But my background in IT, I guess, I didn't need that to come to Prime. Some of my classmates came out of with zero tech background, and they are fantastic programmers. So,
Any other learnings at your startup job? How about learning the business side of things, or
Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
generally nobody knows what they're doing, so there's
across the board?
yeah, across the board. So it's everybody's kind of we're all doing this together, figuring it out every day. I think what's nice about Prime is that there's a level of intensity that happens during the 3-month period that prepares you for the level of intensity of I wouldn't say it's to deal with a dumpster fire, but to deal with a dumpster fire. And so when that crops up, you're like, I remember this feeling. I can do it. And so I think that's you kind of develop a muscle mechanism that I think is really helpful for the startup environment. Yeah, which is hugely important.
A sense of urgency?
Yep.
Due tomorrow kind of thing?
You only have X amount of hours to get done before Prime. Me and my last job, there's a great sense of urgency. I care about those problems. I did it, but here it was just amazing to realize what I could accomplish in such a short period of time. And it's never going to be perfect, especially at a startup. They don't expect perfection. They want something up.
They don't
working.
want perfection even, right?
Yeah, because that's for the 2.0. We'll do that next time. But just something that that passes for now.
You guys speak a little more about the urgency and for people looking at building their apps, like this timeline? Like, are we talking? You kind of referenced weeks to build V. Is that how quickly things move? Like, did you guys create your apps in how long? 2 weeks, 2 months? Like at Prime and like your projects at your job.
2 weeks of Prime and 2 weeks to build a full stack. You'd be surprised how much code you can write with 4 people attacking the same problem, which introduces different challenges, just like organizationally. But with my startup, we don't really have a lot of hard deadlines. It really comes with the business needs. So we kind of, the other dev and I are constantly, we sit in like every meeting ever. We're in like accounting meetings and production meetings. We sit in all the meetings, and we don't do that because that's part of our job. Our job is to listen to what they need and find out if technology can solve any problems that they're having. And so we kind of create our own deadline. So like production's having a big issue with efficiency in this area, and make, they don't need something done in 7 days, but the sooner we can get it to them, the faster they can focus on their jobs and not having to fight the technology. And so we kind of do self-imposed deadlines. The only one we have now is we're launching a new product this fall, so I have like basically to the end of October to launch a new site. So that's like the only hard and fast deadlines we kind of create based on business needs. So again, that comes back to just asking people, what do you need and when do you want it?
Yep.
Our deadlines right now are driven by the NFL season, and leading up to NFL season was intense, especially for dev. And they come in on Sundays and make sure that the site's running smoothly. And I think that an important thing that when you are under the gun is kind of identifying which things are nice to have and which things are must-have for customers. We kind of keep a running list of what things would be helpful but wouldn't ruin someone's experience. So I think, nice to have a
I like how
common.
dramatic it is, like ruin their experience.
Well, with daily
Yeah.
fantasy, they can go other places. So
Yeah.
if they have one bad experience, they're probably done. So we try not to. And the one thing that our company does is our customer support is incredible. Somebody tweets to one of our guys, they are asking questions about what their problem is. I mean, when you don't have as many users as, say, a DraftKings, it's a lot easier to do that. But I think that's why people stick around, even if something didn't work perfectly, is as long as you're willing to own up to it and ask questions to figure out how can we make this experience better for you.
It's really interesting. Yeah, makes sense.
Again, one thing too for just the speed at which you're developing things and making changes in that. There's also this element of being agile and switching directions really fast, which is kind of surprising in the startup world. There's a lot of stories I've heard where we haven't done it, but sometimes you might have an idea for a new feature, and just to gauge interest, you might make a button that says it does that feature. Doesn't really do anything. You're just measuring how many times it clicks on it to see is anybody else interested in it. And that's a really smart, cheap way to actually find out, is this a good thing to even pursue? Do we start planning on that time in the development to make that? Or is this a feature that nobody even cares about? They're not even clicking on it. We could spend a whole month trying to make this new feature that no one's going to use. So you kind of have to kind of plan that plans will change. There's always changing requirements. There's always that change in things, and being able to ride that wave is really fun.
And it sounds like the change of plans is ultimately for the best. Like, you don't want to keep going down that road of making something no one will use. You need to figure out how to totally shift directions.
I'm not quite sure how I fell into the good luck of not having like nasty overhanging deadlines in my startup, but it may be that I'm like removed from the actual startup by like two gaps.
Sure.
I'm just waiting for it to happen. Like, we've got to get this thing done.
Today.
There certainly have been times where it's like, oh, well, this isn't working, and it's Saturday, but we got to get it back up. But yeah, the whole like, oh, well, we just got through that. I got a couple of days break before I head into the next thing of 60-hour weeks. It hasn't been.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's just, I asked about timeline just as people are thinking about it, like, should I expect this to take months, or can this happen in weeks?
kind of going off of the agile thing, it's
Yeah.
also not falling in love with what you did, because it could be gone tomorrow. And I've had several instances where you build a page or a player pool, and they decided without telling you that we're not doing a player pool for this. So I save it because guess what? The player pool is back. And I'm glad I didn't have to build it again. But not falling in love with what you're doing, it might look completely different from what you started with that you thought was perfect, but also allowing and not taking feedback personally from people. Is that I'm sure the first time I build something, it's not perfect as much as I like it, and because of Prime, I think I know it could be better, and I seek out the people with the harshest opinions to make sure that it does get better.
Interesting. Cool. All right. Shifting gears a little bit. So, sounds like you're now working at a startup. Sounds like you're learning a lot. Let's talk kind of a bit about the path to entrepreneurship and capability to really build your ideas. I would like to start this section by kind of peppering a few stories that I've heard recently. So I know one of our grads actually sold their solo project app that they created during the boot camp. I think it's a ice fishing techniques app. So I guess the company is running the app in the storefront, and the sales team is using it. He mentioned he kept it like really MVP, and a lot of buttons just click to existing product pages. That's just cool. Like as you're learning, like you are building something that you could potentially sell. Another cool story is one of our full stack developers and alumni now, Isaac, is collaborating with a UX designer named Katie. I think they're working on some type of note saving app with their unique angle on it, of course. But they were just kind of talking about the benefits of that collaboration and just kind of this community that they met through this experience. And they both agreed that like having two different minds, kind of a design mind and then an engineering mind, has really helped shape and improve their app idea. So kind of a couple cool stories there. So yeah, my question to our panel: if you are inspired by an app idea or like a market opportunity, say tomorrow, or you have already been maybe inspired by an idea of yours, do you feel capable of building it? And how has your path with kind of first starting your journey of Prime's kind of bootcamp experience changed this for you? So do you feel capable of building out your app idea? Maybe you have some examples. And how has kind of your unique path of first learning to code via this crazy bootcamp experience, how has that changed things for you?
Before Prime, I didn't really. You have ideas, and then I kind of let them go. But now, when I have ideas, I'm like, we could do something with that. I have actually a good friend of mine who's going through the UX program right now, and him and I have so much fun just theory crafting ideas and apps we could be building. It has led to a lot of like kind of shiny object syndrome, where I think I've got like 4 or 5 GitHub repos of code that are like starter projects, where we kind of pick it up and run with it for a bit, then we get busy, and then like the next idea comes along, and we run down that for a bit. So we'll have to probably circle back and maybe prune the idea tree a little bit, refine it. But definitely, yeah, Prime gave me the just shift in mindset,
Yeah.
kind of. That yeah, I can make that. Like,
'Cause I think I talked to some entrepreneurs where they're kind of just frustrated, where they have this idea but they just can't really get it on paper. And it sounds like you've got this whole library of starter app ideas. Probably too many. Too many. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, when we talked before about like stuff that I had built on the side, and I was blanking, but no, I built my own smart outlet. It's nothing that's going to market ever.
Are you sure about that?
Totally sure about it. But yeah, there was every plug for my boss's side project. IoT Fuse is doing a hack day in a couple of weeks here. And if you go on Meetup, you can find it. But I participated in that just a few months after Prime and built my own working window opener. Again, nothing you will see ever. In fact, it was dangerous, but but it was fun, and it opened the window. So yeah, it definitely gives you concept skills.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that I would add too is that learning at Prime, you learn how to just code something from the scratch up, which is really cool. But then if you have an idea that you want to build, you kind of understand that you don't have to have the whole idea fleshed out. You can just start working on it. And it's not intimidating in the way that it was before where you didn't have those tools. Once you have those tools to use, you're kind of excited. Like, I get to learn more and I get to try new things and try to put what I have together to make something useful. One of my coworkers had that he goes to a gym, and he was just kind of annoyed that they didn't have a real good app. They didn't have an app. And their website was pretty useless when he was trying to find different classes at his gym. So he just wrote a mobile app. He didn't know how to do it at first. He didn't even know where to get the information, but he just started. And he eventually built it up to the point where he was in talks of selling this app to that company. And if you asked him at the beginning, are you going to be able to do that? He would probably say, I don't really know, but I'm excited to try. I'm excited to find out. And just having those tools can really empower you to do things like that. And it's just fun, even if it doesn't go big. A lot of startups don't end up growing huge like Google. It's really fun. It's a really enjoyable experience.
And I think if you have an app idea, it might be a little overwhelming to think about doing all things because, designing it and coding it and deciding what features are important and coming to Prime, leaving Prime, you have a network of people. I may not be super close to developers, but I know where to find them. And I know one Slack message away and you could potentially partner up. You're given a huge network, relationships with people that you would never have had. I had an app idea. I still have an app idea. It's gotten better since I finished Prime. I realized what people actually want. But it's nice to know that there's where to go to find these resources. And you can pick people's brains while you're at Prime, too. UXers, if you're dev, and just, what do you think about this? And how would you do this? But you might want to wait till you're done. There's a lot of work to be done.
And I also think I feel like Fred is like, I knew she would bring this up. From a, ownership and agency perspective, I think it's a really powerful thing to be the person that can build it versus having to, go to someone else. If you can be, I have an idea and I am guiding the, build and launch of this product, that's I think, a really... when we're thinking about it from a social justice perspective, that can be a really revolutionary thing to give power to people who weren't a part of that conversation originally, or to be a part of entrepreneurship when that you're not commonly represented as an entrepreneur. So I think what is awesome about a Prime or a bootcamp experience is that you now have access to a world that maybe you didn't have access to before.
Yeah, it's kind of. So first, it's just really fun to hear that that you guys are just it's fun that you have these skills, and when you have an idea, it's not I don't know how to do this. It's I'm gonna do tonight and put it in my bucket of 10 other app ideas or apps that I built. And do you feel so kind of reflecting on just your journey to get to where you are in this point, which sounds like you're plugged into the startup community and learning all these lessons, how would your trajectory have been different if you kind of just didn't activate it with kind of bootcamp style learning to code? And you guys did kind of touch on a lot of the elements it's brought to the party, community, but do you feel like it was critical to where you are now in your trajectory?
Oh, 100%.
Can you speak to that?
I would have no idea what I'd be doing right now if I didn't go to Prime. It's a very clear delineation of my life. My career path changed, took a total 180 and then up a Z index or something. But I don't. Yeah, 2 years ago, a year ago, I never would have fathomed I'd be doing what I am now. Something I always wanted to do. I always thought, I should learn coding, but I'm not a programmer. I wouldn't be able to figure it out. But people pay me to do it now, so.
Watch out.
I have no idea where I'd be, and I tried to do the career switch on my own. That didn't work out well, and I kind of felt like I was running out of time. I'm not super old, but you want to make that switch because you have to start from the bottom and go back up. So it was now or never. I only found out about the program a couple weeks before I applied and hadn't even figured out how I was going to pay for it or health insurance, anything like that. And I just jumped in because I was just fed up with what I was doing and ready to be passionate about something again.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, that if all the coding experience, the public speaking, all the skills that Prime gives you is great and worthwhile, worth the tuition right there, but more than that, it was being able to see the path to the next thing that was really crucial for me, because I had the skills to, or I had the ability to do all this. I could have gone out on the web and but the community and the path to better is the real value.
It kind of laid out at least your beginning portion of kind of this path to entrepreneurship and startups, but you can customize it from there too. So I have one more question for the panelists, which is a little kind of open-ended, and then I'm going to turn it to the audience so be thinking of a couple of questions that you would have for the group, and I have a free t-shirt for first question. But last question, formal question for the panelists. Kind of hearing that what they're here for, what advice do you have for others in the room today? Kind of looking at building their app idea, kind of being intrigued with potentially working at a startup. What advice can you offer up? What would be your parting words?
Oftentimes when I have an idea for something, I'll just Google around and see if somebody else has done it. And GitHub, which if you do get into coding is a great place to start, you can kind of see how other people frame the question. One of the things that stuck out to me most when I was at Prime was everyone's given the same problem set, but I think you saw it solved in 20 different ways. And so it's really helpful for me to go look at how other people think about a problem, because you can't think of every single way to solve it. And so with that, you don't have to do everything from scratch. There are plenty of open source tools and projects, so you end up doing a lot more like documentation reading to understand how something works, and then maybe you can add some kind of twist or flavor to it to make it your own. Of course, credit due where it's due. But yeah, nothing has to be, you don't have to code everything from like, blank slate. There's a lot of libraries and tools you can kind of start with and then craft it in your own way.
It seems like that's kind of like a theme of today, that it's not like when you're out to build something, you're not just sitting down for 10 hours literally building the code, or there's all these other elements to the process of figuring out requirements or what you're just talking about. So it's interesting. All right, what other advice do we got?
I would say that if you are tempted to start your own entrepreneurship, if you're tempted to start learning how to program, if you're tempted to get anything like that, the biggest hindrance to you doing it is just starting. You have to start somewhere. Why not start right now? When I wanted to learn programming, I was curious. I didn't even know if I really wanted to go for it or not, so I just picked up a language. I just picked up C++ and just wanted to see, would I even enjoy this? Is this an idea worth pursuing? And the more I did it, the more I liked it. And that was kind of confirmation. Coming to Prime, huge confirmation. And then just kind of getting involved more in the startup community. It's just, there's so much drive there. There's so much excitement in getting involved in that. And if you kind of feel that kind of edging you on, then you just keep going with it. But you have to start somewhere. And if you don't start somewhere, you're not going to start. It's never going to get done on its own.
Erin, what advice do you have?
So I think the one thing that's hard about the world of startup is that it moves really fast. And so I think if you can, and it's also very exciting and invigorating, but I think if you can find community in whatever shape that takes for you, that's going to be really important, so that you're not feeling overwhelmed by the intensity or the speed or the pace of learning that's necessary. So whether that's like co-working spaces or people that are a part of your cohort or people you work with at meetup groups, breeding that kind of community so that you have folks to lean on and folks to like ask the questions, and that can be virtual as well as in person. But I think that's important to kind of feel like you can keep pace.
So for someone using that example or that advice, like if I was looking to build out my app idea, and to your kind of point of kind of bringing other members and it's fun to work with, like get a team together maybe, and now you have accountability and even more excitement. And makes sense.
I guess my advice would be similar to that, is using that community to flesh out your idea. If it's up in your head and not somewhere that you can share it, it's not getting better. And I think that just more people you tell about it, they can help you fix it, that's fine, but just selling the idea and defending your decisions and why this is important, I think that gets you more excited about putting this into play, and you feel more confident about your idea. So you got the development of your idea and you got the confidence. That's all you need.
Mm-hmm. You're inspiring me to ask the audience what their app idea is now. Yeah, but it's a good point of like saying it out loud, getting feedback. Don't just keep this in your head and it not going anywhere. You need to build momentum. You need to get energized by others. You need to find a community. Point taken for sure. Who else got advice? When we hit up,
I echo the try it, and also believe. So many times in my life I looked at something I wanted to do or thought that would be neat, and put it aside because I thought it'd be too hard. And I think looking back that I was almost always wrong. So yeah, that would be my advice.
the power of hindsight. All right. So now I am shifting gears and looking at you guys. What questions do you have for our panelists today? What would you like to know? Yeah. Yes. Great. T-shirt. Let's start with the ongoing learning element.
Whether Prime would be good for.
Sounds like you. Yeah, I want to reiterate. Like if you kind of learn these tech skills and then your kind of path is to like go off on your own because you want to build your own thing, but now you're on your own, and he's kind of referencing. It sounds like you guys got this really nice like ongoing learning structure at your startup. Am I going to be okay when I go out on my own now, and it's kind of up to me? Or what would you? What kind of path would you recommend if you don't think that's?
I really like that working in the startup environment because it does give me so many opportunities to learn. But I think that as a developer, I would think if it were me, I would really need to rely on stuff like meetups and have to stretch myself.
Like kind of that community element, like find other ways if it's not the company you're working at to.
But I mean, I got into those things.
I think it's less the structure of my company that makes it ongoing learning. It's the frame of mind that everybody in the company has. In fact, I think there might be less opportunity for learning in a startup because you don't have time for that. You don't have the resources for that. I think it's really a personality thing or a motivation thing for learning. So frame of mind, and that's something that I came away with from Prime, but I don't think it's the only way, obviously, to do that. It's just the wanting to expand in a certain area that you care about.
And knowing who to get in touch with if you need that support.
Yeah, I'd throw in for the meetups because you don't know what you don't know. And I love going to the JavaScript MN meetup because there are people there who talk about things I had no idea existed. And now that I know they exist, I can go learn about them. So that's, meetups and like community. I keep saying things with community members, meetups. Go find people that are in the field because there's always people working on things you had no idea existed. And I'm just innately curious, so I'm going to go read about it, even if it's a Wikipedia page. And if I'm still curious, then start diving into the code. People love talking about what they're working on. So. Yeah, absolutely.
So to kind of recap, it sounds like, maybe there isn't exactly the, you kind of mentioned like structure, but maybe at these startups there's not this manual of here's what you should learn next, but it's just kind of this environment that you're expected to continuously learn. And if you were to kind of go out on your own right away after you're kind of still kind of a beginner, you just have to kind of apply the pressure on yourself to like keep getting out there and keep talking to people to absorb more and more knowledge to keep developing your skills. Sure. Even that, yeah.
I guess that kind of segues into your second question, which is how do you, does it benefit the client to have technical knowledge when they request things? I guess I deal with that all the time. So we have folks on our team that they want things, but I don't want to say they're not interested in hearing the technical explanation of how or why it will take so much time. That's definitely a skill, is being able to, how do I interpret the engineering that needs to occur to make this idea come to life in a way that's not like super dry and boring and relatable. That is definitely a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. Every single day I'm posed with trying to break down what I'm working on and then why it's going to take as much time as I think it will, which I'm getting better at guessing, but like I used to be horrible. I'm like, I don't know, 2 weeks, and then it'd be 3 days, or I don't know, 3 days, 2 weeks later. Ongoing process.
But it sounds like you, I heard earlier, like, are you kind of transparent sometimes about that too? You're like, I don't know how long this will
Oh,
take.
and that's,
You know?
and that's, I think setting expectations is very important. Knowing when it's appropriate to say, I don't know, but here's my path forward. It's one thing to say, I don't know, when they call it an end of the day, but if you say, I don't know, but here's what I think I can do, and, lay out some paths, I think people can relate to that. People like being told the truth, so I think it helps.
I think if you're deciding on whether to develop yourself or hire somebody else, another thing to keep in mind is that learning to write code, learning to be a developer changes the way you think in a lot of really good ways. You challenge a lot of the norms, a lot of your assumptions. You start looking at it and saying, this might be inefficient. Why are we doing it that way? We should do it a different way. My CEO was a developer in a past life, and he does not accept the status quo for anything because he knows we can probably figure out a different way to do this. We can do this some other better way. Now, he doesn't use that on his daily basis, but it really helps him be a better CEO and a better decision maker. Jeff Bezos was a developer, richest man in the world. I don't think that that's just a coincidence. I think that it changed the way he thought about problems and thought about solutions and thought about how he's helping other people or he's working with other people. So I think that learning to do it can only help you. It won't hurt, certainly.
Whether or not that's your trajectory to kind of be the expert at coding or not, it's just, it could be worth tackling the skill to build your app, just to get that knowledge. Yeah. Cool. What other questions do we have? Yes.
Stack Overflow is an amazing one. I consider myself a full Stack Overflow developer.
Yeah, someone has already done it on Stack Overflow, right? It's already been done before.
Other than the Mozilla one, I just found this one called CSS Tricks. So I am not great at layouts and making things look beautiful. I'll make them very functional, but I'm now having to learn how to do the front end kind of beautifying. So I have been spending a lot of time on CSS Tricks, which has an amazing set of documentation on how to make the square fit perfectly in the corner when you need it to.
Cool. I was going to mention too, because we just haven't totally touched on Claire, you kind of have a unique path and story to kind of what activated your trajectory within the startup space, and to kind of the point of, hey, should I learn to code to build this, or should someone else do it? Can you just talk a little bit about how like you initially came to Prime to learn to code, but your path, you're still in this space, but it kind of took a totally different turn?
Yeah, so I don't code on a daily basis for work anymore. But I think so.
You were actually in HR.
Yeah, the story is, I mean, it's a tech startup, so we call it something else.
What is it?
It's called People Operations. So I started off as an engineer, and then I started, like, I think, like, myself just kind of, like, inserted itself. I started doing a lot of diversity inclusion work and people development work within the engineering team I was a part of, and then made connections with people operations and transitioned to that role full time. And I mean, I think sometimes people are like, that's weird. But I think when we're talking about the startup space and trying to bring different personality types together and different ways of communicating and getting like problem solving together, it's been really useful to be able to not only speak to like an engineering background, but also have worked with quite a few of the engineers. I think a lot of people, even if we call ourselves something else, still are not fully trusting of HR. And so I think I have a super leg up in that sense, having worked with those people. And so in terms of trust building and I think understanding the kind of unique problems that we're having to solve from a people perspective, it's been really helpful.
So it was your way to kind of break into this space, and then you kind of found your home just with your.
Yeah, and I don't think
coming
like
out
I didn't necessarily come to Prime being like someday I'm going to be in HR. Like, I think for me, the idea of being a maker is really important,
Yeah.
and so that was what initially drew me to Prime, and then it just kind of organically unfolded that way, and
I love it.
I try not to be judgmental though.
It's a fun path. One more question, if we got it. Anyone else? Yeah. Talk a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a bit of both. So we, for the group projects here at Prime, we had the four of us, and so what that really looked like was after we had the requirements from the client, we kind of laid out what we thought were the individual tasks and how they. We used an application called Trello, Trello, which is free, and that helps you kind of create a storyboard of little cards. You kind of sort them and organize them as you see fit. You can color code them. I learned after the fact, but that was really helpful, and so we. That's how we kind of organized the workflow. And then the coding itself, GitHub, is a way where you can kind of check things in and out and collaborate. That's not without its own downfalls. We definitely broke each other's code numerous times, but then you learn and you kind of find new ways to organize. A lot of it was figuring out how do you work on a team. It was one of the big lessons of group coding was that. So, yeah, Trello for organizing tasks, any kind of project management, system that works best for you or the team that you're with. I just mentioned Trello because it's free and pretty easy to pick up. And then kind of just failing forwards when it comes to working with a group of people. So, I'll use Slack. Yeah, Slack is awesome. It's also free. I like a lot of free things. It's a free open source. I'm all over that. But yeah, Slack.
And to kind of the question on the group project, maybe people are considering this, like, would you guys recommend, like, starting in kind of a team? Because you had mentioned, like, oh, we can get a lot done with 4 people versus just me. Do you recommend going that route if you're trying to build out your idea? Or
Yeah, if you've got, yeah, I think so.
Or no?
I would recommend it. It's a learning experience in of itself. You can get a lot more done, but I think you definitely need to set yourself up to succeed. You need to have clear delineation of who's going to work on what. Don't have people working on the same task simultaneously. That's not efficient. There's just kind of more organizational stuff you have to work through. And then and trust the people. Yep, exactly. And again, like, everyone solves the same problem differently. So it's kind of, I enjoyed it because I could go check out somebody else's branch of code and kind of look through it and be like, oh, that's how you solve the pop-up box on this page. I need to make something similar over here. I'm going to borrow some of these pieces, bring them over to my thing, and that's very common. So.
Any other questions? Did you have one? No. Yeah. That's our CEO. Pass the mic over.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we're on a 6-week planning cycle where we do 2-week sprints and use Jira to track. And I mean, we're like, I feel like I'm like the imposter. We're like a 120-person startup. So it's like a deeper level of organization that needs to happen than if it's 2 engineers.
Yeah, there's 2 of us. We
Yeah.
we do them on Slack. It's more like, what'd you work on yesterday? What are you working on today? Are you blocked? No. All right, back at it. Thanks. So that's something we implemented like a month ago. So, yeah, I like it. It's helpful for me because sometimes you get stuck in the weeds, and it's one thing to to ask somebody questions constantly. It's nice to kind of have a little outlet beginning of the day, like, hey, 15 minutes, here's my thing I'm really stuck on, and it's priority. Help me through it. And then we can go back to what we have to work on. So I like it. I'm sure there's once we get into more developers, because we'll be hiring more developers, we'll have to come up with more organizational stuff. But right now it's the lead dev and then me. So usually if I have to figure something out, I defer to him, because it's him or the internet. So.
All right. So I think that is all the time we have for today. I hope you guys are leaving a little more inspired about kind of building and bringing your app idea to life. Thank you so much to our panelists. Join me in giving them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you to our guests for joining us. If you know someone that might be interested in Prime programs and kind of some version of the path that these panelists took, just wanted to plug that our next application deadline is coming up in November, which means that you could be building your app idea or kind of launching your startup career, I think as soon as spring, which is May. So I had to mention when I checked in a lot of you, but we will be, if you guys are interested in kind of touring the space, checking out where students are working, just learning a little more about our background or whatever you want to learn more. Our panelists will also be kind of joining these tours. We will be meeting in that corner and splitting up, and that'll go from 1:15 till about 1:30. You can be out of here. So thank you guys again for coming.